Well, on to this story now. We return to one of our top stories as Donald Trump prepares to take up residence in the White House yet again. We take a look at the implications of this for South Africa and certainly for the African continent. As we've been reporting today, Trump has won 276 electoral college votes compared to 223 for U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. My colleague Xoli Mngambi is in Washington, D.C. for us, and he joins us now for more. Xoli, a good evening to you. What's the reaction been like there at the U.S. Capitol?
Well, good morning to you, Naledi, my time here. And the reaction coming in, you could say, but not so thick and fast. I think the Democratic camp, they are probably still dealing with the emotions. In fact, we have information now suggesting that the vice president, who is also the Democratic presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, is going to be addressing at some point today, and the understanding is that she is going to be conceding defeat. And talking about the Kamala Harris camp, I have someone with me who is a lecturer at Howard University, and Dr Sipho Sithole needs no introduction to the South African audience because you are a very familiar face there. But you are in America,
yes,
lecturing at Howard University, Department of and Cultures. Before we get there, I'd like for us to talk about what the mood may have been like. I know you were not necessarily there, although you planned to be there. You were not there, but it surely must be a very disappointing time for that camp.
Let me tell you, firstly, I live about 3 blocks from the university and next to the Shaw Howard University train station. So you could see everyone coming out of the train station, walking up 7th Avenue into Georgia Avenue to go and fill up that yard in front of the Frederick Douglass Memorial Hall.
Because that's where the watch party
That's where the watch party is. And everyone was going there because they were anticipating nothing less than a victory and a victory speech. And, you know, I was on the wait list myself to be there because the university kept sending emails to say tickets to the watch party, and then you respond and it says it's sold out, but you are on the wait list.
Wow.
You know? So I was also going to be walking up there just to see, you know, what's happening. And I mean, for me, it would have been a historical moment to be in front of a presidential, supposedly victory speech, you know.
And sadly, she didn't even address, because the understanding was that she was going to address, but I suppose it was all dependent on whether or not she was going to win the night.
I think it's also because the window for that whole victory part was up until 10 p.m. Eastern time. So when they could see that Georgia had not been called and Pennsylvania had not been called, and it was going to be after that time, they then the strategists went out and said to the people there, please come back. The president won't. The president candidate is not going to address you today.
Ouch.
And I could hear the entourage of Kamala leaving later on, because you could hear them just
the sirens.
The sirens, yes.
Yeah. Ouch. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Let's talk then, Dr. Sithole, about the new president-elect, because that's effectively what he becomes now, President Trump. His vitriol towards the African continent is not something that we can even repeat on national TV, some of the words that he has used for countries like South Africa, for example. But here is where I'm going with this question, and it is that with a person like him back in office now, how difficult a job is this going to be for government communicators? And I have in my head Vincent Magwenya, the spokesperson for President Ramaphosa, who may at time to time have to come out and emphasize that relations between South Africa and the US are solid, despite what the President of America may or may not have said. How difficult a time is it for them going into this next 4 years?
As communicators, we always find an angle to communicate even the worst of news in such a way that it lifts the spirit of the nation, because the one thing that you could be is to be a damper on what is already a dampened situation, you know. So I would assume that he would be saying, of course, we will support any president that gets elected to lead America, and we'll work with them, because at the end of the day, we talk about bilateral and multilateral and cooperation.
Yeah.
Remember, we work in a global system, in an international order. So there is expectation of behaviors between countries, regardless of who is now leading.
And I want to finally take advantage of the fact that you are a lecturer in world languages and culture. Cultural diplomacy.
Yeah.
How important is it? And could that be used now to try and soften this relationship with Trump coming back?
It's a great question, Xoli. Let me first go back to Albert Camus, who is the Algerian-born French philosopher, who said, without culture and the relative freedom it implies, society, even when it's perfect, is in a jungle, which basically means that culture can make sense of an imperfect society and articulate and project what it's supposed to be for people to find their role within a system that could be imperfect at all. But remember that after the Second World War,
Yeah.
when culture had been used as a weapon by Hitler, culture then became used as a tool to advance nation states to project a positive image about how countries are supposed to behave. And interesting enough, Xoli, it was Dwight Eisenhower, who was the president of America at that time, and having been the commander of the Allied forces during the World War, who actually then used culture as a tool to drive diplomacy in the world.
Dr. Sipho Sithole, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Sipho Sithole, no stranger to the South African audience, but of course is based in Washington, D.C. now as a lecturer. Let's take it back to you, Naledi, in the studio.